techniques and strategies that you can use that we've based this presentation off of. And it's got a lot more content than we're able to go into today. Print them out, keep them at your desk. I go through them before I do any sort of like user trainings or before I meet with any of the users, just to really get a good feel for how I want to approach them in that particular conversation. So hopefully you get a little bit of a surface level understanding today, and then you can dig deeper in. All right, so Melissa.
All right, so today we're going to watch Brent, really, be the awesome admin that he is. And then you'll watch me literally transform before your eyes from a regular user into a super user. Watch out, it's gonna be fun.
Hopefully you guys, laugh a little bit, but yeah, we practiced maybe twice for this, and so I think I'm not really sure how it's gonna turn out. I think it's gonna be good, but we wanted to have some fun. All right, so our agenda is here. You have that on your sheets as well. Feel free to take notes on that sheet if you want, and you can use it in conjunction with the PowerPoint once it's loaded. Also, our script is loaded in the PowerPoint as well. So when you go and download that from the Success community, it's not just the slides in the show or in the notes. We'll actually have kind of our laid out script too, so you won't get lost. All right, so we're gonna talk about our very first point, which is make it personal. So I want you to take just a moment, close your eyes if you want, but I want you to think about your very first car. Okay, think of your very first car. Now, more than likely, you guys had some emotion that ran through you. I heard a couple of chuckles, so there's a little bit of humor there, right? But you had some sort of emotional pull, regardless of what it was. And I would venture to say that you had maybe a sense of ownership. Maybe there was a sense of pride in the vehicle. There were a couple chuckles, so obviously there might have been some humor around that. Maybe you were just completely frustrated with the amount of repairs that you had to do on an ongoing basis. I know for me, I felt this as well. My first car was this really classy 1989 Mercury Grand Marquis station wagon. I know. Imagine pulling into the high school parking lot with that. And you know what's sad is I actually thought I was really cool in that car.
Lady killer.
So I grew up in Arizona, and what you can't see is that the interior was maroon leather, and it had one working air vent.
Yes.
So, by the time you reach your destination, it went from 120 degrees inside to about 87, and that was pretty cool for the interior of the car in the middle of summer. And I felt all of those range of emotions. And I don't know if you can tell, but the paneling was kind of like a decal, right? It was one of those. And so it has started to fade there across the top. I had scratches all over it. But I had a sense of pride and ownership in this car because it was mine, right? And so it wasn't going to get any more scratches or any more fading under my watch because this was mine. I had a sense of ownership and pride in the vehicle. And so this first point of making it personal is, how do we get our users to get a sense of ownership in the application? How do we give them the opportunity to speak into the application and begin to have a sense that they are a part of the process? Right? This is part of kind of releasing the reins a little bit as Salesforce admins, not being so guarded, and allow them to speak into what we're doing. And this is really hard, but you have to hand over some of the keys to Salesforce. And you have to kind of figure out what that looks like for your organization specifically. But what are some of the opportunities that you can take to involve your users more, to help you make critical decisions, whether it's on the business side, on configuration, give them the opportunity to speak into it. They will start to well up with some pride when you implement their process, right? And now they're taking ownership in the application. You're beginning to build advocacy from that point. So, Melissa, Miss User, how has your admin helped you? How has he or she handed over the keys?
Well, my admin has, I'm loud mouth, I don't need this, but, so my admin, is this working? No.
It'll work in a second.
Hello? Hello? All right, so my admin, they don't ever work for me. Maybe I don't turn them on right.
Here. We did practice.
That's ironic. Okay, so my admin got me involved in the process early on. He sat down with me, he asked me what my pain points were. He got me so excited that he was listening to me and implementing in front of my eyes solutions that I was asking for. I can't tell you, so I'm going to show you with these cuffs that they represent the trust that I feel for my admin now.
So providing ownership creates trust. And that's really what we're trying to build here, right? Your user should be trusting you. And so we've got the armbands of trust here in the transformation of our user into the rad user who can do rad shit. And so you need to figure out what that looks like in your organization. But if there are elements that you can turn over, start to do that. And you can do it slowly. You might want to choose specific individuals at first. But begin to loosen the reins a little bit. Let them be able to speak into that process. All right, number 2, tip the scales. How many of you have seen an ad something like this? No one has seen an ad like that. Okay. All right, yeah, so we've seen this. How many of you have seen something like this? This actually was the ad that ran a couple weeks ago that shut down their site, and I just happened to be wanting to buy tickets, and I thought, well, this goes perfect with the presentation, so I'll include that in there. Tipping the scales is something that you guys are already familiar with to some degree. This really is the idea of how do I get them engaged and how do I get them to use Salesforce? It's also called maybe like the stick and the carrot, right? The idea is, how do you understand what the processes are in Salesforce and how do I get them to take the right path? How do I get them to do the right thing in Salesforce? I was describing this to someone earlier today, and I said it's kind of like when you come to a Y in the road or in your process in Salesforce, you lay one path with candy and the other you lay with, razor blades or something, right? And you say, okay, user, choose which way you want to go, and they're going to choose the path with the candy, right? So the idea is to tip the scales in their favor. And you're identifying the desired outcome, and you're producing an output that is satisfactory to them. And really, this is in terms of the associated gains. So understand, what are the gains and losses, and how can I make the gain side of that decision more desirable than the loss? This is a difficult point to kind of talk through and understand because there's so many potential options there. And you can go any number of directions. So again, I'd encourage you when we post the link to download that PDF because there's so many more bullet points underneath that I think will help to articulate this a little bit better. But the idea is gains versus losses, and make sure those are visible and the user is aware that they exist. So Melissa, what has your admin done for giving you candy?
So my admin, he actually worked with my boss and got approval from my boss to say whoever on the team every quarter has the most accurate opportunities entered in Salesforce gets a free Friday off from work. Hey. What? Oh yeah, I'm getting that in. And I got a Friday off last quarter, so I'm looking to do that again. And also another thing that he's taken the time to do is he actually didn't just involve me in the beginning to get these initial trust factors. He actually makes it a point to put a one-on-one time with me on my calendar every single quarter without fail to sit down and just ask me, what problems am I having with this solution today? What could he do to help me? And man, that really solidifies this, and it brings it to a whole new level because now that I know the rules to the game, because he's teaching me and there to support me, I am in it to win. And let me tell you, I'm feeling good. We're getting to the next level here. Oh yeah, tool belt for the win. Yeah, all right.
All right, so gamification is a big point in that, right? And you don't have to do a formal process. You don't need to purchase a gamification application. The idea is, how do we get the user more engaged? And gamification is a great example of that. Pick something that's easy to measure, something that you can get your managers to rally around. It doesn't have to be just sales. You could focus in on who can leverage chatter the most, and how you measure that I don't know, but you could start out with something like that and break it down by department. Be creative and start to kind of brainstorm through that. The other piece really is the stick piece, right? And that still has to exist. And kind of the common mantra is, if it isn't in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. Understand what that looks like in your organization and how you can have a sense of loss there if they don't go down the desired outcome. You still need to have something to be pushing them along if the carrot isn't working. And then the other component to that is a feedback loop. So, the example here is monthly one-on-ones. At one point in time, I had users who wanted to sit down with me one-on-one for personalized training. And with 1,200 users, it's pretty impossible to do. But I thought, okay, well, if they want that, then instead of me going to them, let them come to me. So I actually set up kind of one of those schedule me pages, where you could kind of have your calendar there. They could block off a section of time, and they reserved time on my calendar. I would call them, we'd meet for 30 minutes, whatever topic they wanted. And that produced not only a feedback loop, but a training mechanism to allow them to understand a lot more about the product and the process in a one-on-one, non-threatening environment versus a classroom style. So feedback loop is huge. And then we already kind of talked about the breadcrumbs, right? So lay down the breadcrumbs or the candy in that example and help them to choose the desired path with some really great associated gains. Okay, this one I think is my personal favorite. I kind of wanted to do this one last because it's pretty epic, but it didn't quite fit through the flow. So we might come back to this one again at the end because it's just that big, but craft the journey. So how many of you have done a training or something of that nature where you're able to measure the engagement of the room on a very scientific scale called the yawnometer? All right, yes, so, right, yeah. Unlike a conference like this, we know they're not tweeting, right? So yeah, if they're on their phone, they're not paying attention. So, the yawnometer is a very unscientific way to measure who's engaged in your training. And I've been in these trainings, I've led these trainings before, and I realized no one's paying attention. I've had, sales reps who were sales reps for 3 years. I've trained them in the same exact thing, and they're still sending emails of, hey, how do I do this really simple process? Okay, well, you didn't pay attention, obviously, so, right, we gotta do something different. So, when you are measuring in this particular capacity, you aren't crafting a very enticing journey, right? Think of kind of like a movie. You go to a movie because it has a beginning, middle, and end. There's explosives somewhere in there, even if it's a romantic comedy now. And it's very engaging, right? So the idea is, how do we craft a journey from the time that they are hired to the time that they are retired or let go, or whatever the end point is, right? It sounded a lot better when I rehearsed it. But basically, how do we get the user engaged from the very first touch point all the way through? Because we don't want their journey to look like this. We want it to look like this.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
This is a journey I want to go on as a user, right? So the idea is, how do you understand your user to the point that you can craft this journey for them? And it's all about a mentality shift, right? It's you making that mentality shift to say, okay, my trainings are going to be super awesome. I'm going to take that Word document with 99 pages, size 12 font, 0 spacing in between, and I'm going to make it really pretty. I'm going to throw in a practical joke in my emails to make sure people are reading. Right? It's planting Easter eggs. It's making that mental shift in your mind to say, I want my users to experience an epicness from me and out of Salesforce. And so this mentality turns into the rad users who can do rad shit mentality. That's what you need to put on, right? You need to put that into your brain and think, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make an awesome experience for them so that they can get engaged, they stay engaged, and we've got that feedback loop going. We built the trust. right? You kind of see how everything's piling on together, and this makes a really great experience. You see why I like this section? This is a really good one. All right, so it's planting Easter eggs. Understand in your environment, based on your industry, the flexibility that you have, there's some way you can plant Easter eggs, whether it's in Salesforce, outside of Salesforce. Have some fun, right? Salesforce as a company has fun. You guys are following, you follow Salesforce employees, the Dreamforce, Salesforce Twitter handle. They're having a lot of fun, but they're a business application, right? Why can't we do that to some extent? So it's all about planting Easter eggs. So Melissa, what has your admin done for this sort of thing?
First of all, I just want to say I tried finding the outfit of the doesn't exist. Yeah. So disappointing. Okay, so my admin has, first of all, set up some validation rules because I always forget what I need to enter. And instead of getting frustrated with them like I used to always get frustrated because it's just this red blob on the screen and I'm like, what do I need to put in that field? Now I know because he's made it fun and informative. So it says, hey there, cowboy, what are you doing? Slow down there. And then it tells me what I need to do and after that. So it makes me laugh. And then I see exactly what I need to do. It tells me, oh, you did this. You should have actually just gone over here and done this instead. So I know I'm going to learn as I save. And is that up there on the field? Yeah, so there it is. So now I know, instead of just a bunch of red boxes, I'm actually learning and being trained as I go, which is way, way less frustrating and very fun. He also chatterpunks us, which is my personal favorite because I'm a good user and I always have my picture up, but I love looking at all the people who get chatterpunked. It's nice. It makes engaging in chatter a lot more fun instead of seeing those blank, scary faces. It's kind of freaky.
The blue circle.
Oh, and my personal favorites. Every time I log in, I never know if he's updated the notorious Chuck Norris facts up on my message board. I don't know where he comes up with these things, but I'll tell you what, he makes work more fun and engaging. And so the cape is for fun and informative.
So
good.
you can start to see that there's some ways that you can start to have fun with Salesforce, right? And these are great examples of some really easy ways you can do it. A lot of us, I think, tend to default to the standard kind of you made an error validation rule or whatever the message is. Spice it up a little bit, right? Have some fun. You do need to be, you need to know your users a little bit, so don't chatterpunk someone who, wants to kill you already. Know your audience a little bit. And in some industries that may not work, but that's an example of some of the things that you can do. And then think outside of Salesforce as well. So how are you engaging with your users? When you're doing a training, what does your training material look like? Are you starting off with a funny video from YouTube? Are you inserting jokes along the way, right? Like, how can you just lighten the mood a little bit to keep them captive and keep them on their feet? And that's really the crafting the journey piece, keeping them engaged. And these are actually all real examples, so I have used all of these. And in fact, the Chuck Norris ones, we started that a couple months ago, and I had a user come up to me the other day, and he goes, you guys haven't updated that in like a month. And I said, okay, well that's great, that means that you're actually paying attention, so I'll go update it. It's great. Okay, so the next one, set up the options. So there was a study done recently, and the question was asked, what are you indecisive about? And 50% of people said they weren't sure, and 50% said that they didn't know. And it was a really informative study. How many of you would say that you are indecisive? I'm in that camp. And if you're not raising your hand, probably you're indecisive. So making decisions is difficult, and there is actually real science. I didn't put it here, but there's real science that shows that we make a certain number of decisions a day, and the additional decisions that we make as we make our way through the day, they actually have fewer and fewer. We make fewer and fewer good decisions throughout the day, basically, right? There's something called decision fatigue. And that means that you start to make decisions to a critical mass that you begin to kind of block everything else out, right? Like, and everyone's experienced this. Your mind just shuts down. You can't make another decision. And for us who are indecisive, that's really awful. So, how many of you have gone to? I mean, how many of you have gone to Dreamforce or you've been to San Francisco? Okay, so for those of you who haven't, it is, I think, a law now that you have to compost. And if you've gone to restaurants, you've seen a compost bin. In Denver, it's not a law, but we like to think that we're pretty green in more than one way. And so occasionally I'll come across a restaurant that has a third option to compost. Now, when recycling's been around for long enough that we kind of understand, at least for the most part, what's trash and what goes into recycle. I think 20 years has been long enough for us to figure that out. Some people need longer, but that's okay. And but now you add in the third option of compost. And I, literally, especially when I go to San Francisco, because it's every restaurant, I'll stand with my tray and I will analyze for 10 seconds. That was 10 seconds. And it takes me about that long to decide what needs to go where before I actually take any specific action, right? Because there are so many potential options. So just to kind of map this out a little bit, we've got the food items on the left and our 3 disposal options on the right. So we've got our food container, we've got leftover food remnants, we've got our drinking receptacle, and our eating utensils. Now with trash and recycle, that's pretty easy. We can make that association. But these are the options with 3. It's a lot of options just to throw something away. So you can see how decision fatigue can really start to put into play, right? Because people are making a decision from the time that they wake up to the time that we go to sleep. And the goal as admins should be, how do we help reduce the number of decisions that they need to make in any given day? Why? Well, they make better decisions. Your data is cleaner. It's more accurate. They don't get frustrated with the system. And when we're talking about setting up the options, we're really talking about automation. So you're making them more efficient along the way. These are all really, really good things. So set up the options. Understand, how can I strip out elements of a decision-making process and flatten that decision tree, right? If you map out a process in Visio or you whiteboard it, how can you cut out decisions? Try not to have more than 3 if you can. And default fields where you can, right? All of these things are ways that you can help them become more engaged in that way. So Melissa, what did your admin do to help you set up the options?
Okay, so my admin has done a couple of things. The most important thing is that he listens to me. And when on one of our last one-on-one sessions, I told him that I was having a lot of problems filling out the lead page because I wasn't sure what to put, even though there was a lot of validation rules and I just wasn't sure, there wasn't a lot of required fields, but I didn't know where to put what. And he went through and took the time to actually put a page layout that was stripped down to just the most important fields to get it going, so that even my assistant, if I could just shoot her a couple of emails, or in one email she can put it in for me. And then when it saves, it changes to a new record type and page layout that if I want to, I can go back in later and fill in more details. But the first page I see is really streamlined. And it's only one example of all the times that he listens to me and has automated the processes that he could. And so I am literally unstoppable now because I am free to do my job and make a lot of money for the company as a sales rep. So I have a mask here for automation. All right. Oh yeah. I probably should take my Okay, man, this is awesome.
So in this, So in this particular point, they wanted something that was easy to enter in leads. They were doing this all the time. They wanted to tab down, only see the most important pages, right? So we created that single column. They could tab through required pages or fields at the top. When they hit save, a workflow kicks off, changes it to the new record type, which is the standard record type that anyone else would be creating. And that actually saved a lot of time, and the users felt really, really happy. There's some other things that you can do here, obviously, default fields, dependent pick lists, workflow rules with field updates. All of these things empower the user. It helps to reduce the number of decisions that they need to make. If you can understand that 90% or even 80, 60% of the time, a field is going to be populated with this value, default it. You know, give them the option to change it, but if you know that it's that high of a percentage, set a value, right? These are small little incremental things that we can do to help reduce decision fatigue. And automation really is that way to solidify the user buy-in. So automate everything that you can. Automate all the things. Who's seen that meme?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right, the last point is keep it simple. And in spirit of that point, we're going to keep this one simple. This is not flashy. This is tedious. Making things simple is hard. So this really is that tactical and ongoing engagement that you're having as a Salesforce administrator. So these are the difficult conversations when someone says, hey, I want this to go in Salesforce, and you sit down and say, okay, let's map the process, and that's too many steps, we need to cut this down, right? That page layout, I have found that X number of fields results in this percentage of dirty data. Do your homework a little bit so that you understand how you can come back to the business and make a case for simplification. This is where you start to rub into people's egos and you start to have political debates, right? So this is a very difficult step, but it's one that if you can't keep things simple, you've eroded all of the work of the awesome admin, right? We created this awesome user who can do rad shit by doing those other things. And if you can't keep it simple, trust begins to wane, and that really is the foundation of your users. So keep it simple. I really like this quote by Richard Branson: complexity is your enemy. Any fool can make something complicated. It's hard to make something simple. And I think that really is true. Okay, so Melissa, just to review, what did we learn today? What did you learn today?
Well, I learned a lot, as you can see. I have built trust. My admin has built trust with me. I've learned that I have a voice in the company and in my process, and I'm part owner. And my admin has empowered me to realize that. I also have the belt for wins, right? So I know how to play the game. I've been taught, and I know that I can get a Friday off, for example. That's pretty awesome. And I have fun with the cape. I'm always having a good time, learning, being engaged, chatting, talking to people, and oh my gosh. So